Strap into your seats and get ready. It's time for the Mortarpod.
Hey, it's Alex from SeemsGoodMagic.com. Welcome to this week's episode of the Mortarpod. Jake and I can talk about GP Vegas, which is going on as we speak, and it's pretty momentous occasion since it's the highest turnout for a Magic tournament in recorded Magic history. So it's pretty impressive. They actually had to cap out how many people could go, which is crazy. I don't think they've ever done that before, so pretty crazy. They just, were unprepared for 4,500 plus people. And yeah, well, we get into it in the podcast so you can hear all about it. Unfortunately, this one gets cut off a little bit short as Jake has to go into work early. And I don't really like doing these podcasts on my own. I'd rather have someone to talk to. So we really need to get a guest back in next weekend. I've got a couple people in mind that I'm going to bring back. So stay tuned for that. Please support my eBay store. Go to SeemsGoodMagic.com. Click on the eBay store icon. Look for some playsets and singles. It directly supports these podcasts, all my draft videos, my live streaming, all of that. Costs a lot of money, so it really helps me out if you buy playsets and singles from me. You can contact me about this podcast at Mortarpod at SeemsGoodMagic.com. Follow us on Twitter at SeemsGoodMagic. And live stream times are still Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 p.m. Central Time. This podcast is also brought to you by VarenCamp.com. Scott Varenkamp designs SeemsGoodMagic.com, and you can visit his portfolio at Varenkamp.com. That's VEHRENKAMP.com. Jake and I also talk about the old vintage cards again. We discover some more kind of poorly designed cards by today's color standards. So hope you enjoy it. Yeah, I'll see you guys soon. Alright, I wanted to start off talking about the Grand Prix in Las Vegas, because this is, I don't know, I think it's pretty groundbreaking news.
Yeah.
The fact that it is the largest Magic tournament ever, pretty impressive. Is that going on right now? Like, it's all weekend, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think pre-reg ended yesterday. I don't know. I'm sure it's in this article.
I don't know how to pronounce this woman's last name, but I've seen her before. She's in charge of some Helene Bergeau.
Yeah, I think
Something like that.
I think she's like almost their PR rep. I bet if you just looked at their archive, you could
see what her reputation was. I feel like she's
She might be in charge of their tournaments, actually. Like,
well, whatever it is, she writes that 4,000 players have already pre-registered for Grand Prix Las Vegas. That's pretty remarkable. That's just people that pre-regged. So God knows, like,
yeah,
how many people were just expecting to show up, which is insane. I mean, that already tells you there were enough players that pre-registered that they didn't even have to, like, know at the time, at day of, like, how many people were going to show up, which is what ultimately made them decide to cut it off at 4,500. And it said to ensure the best possible experience. I'm sure there's a lot of factors involved with why that would ensure the best experience. Or, yeah, I mean, you were saying earlier it had to do with, like, the product. Like, it might have... It could have to do with product. I was saying it probably has to do with room size. Jake and I went to the Zendikar Grand Prix in, I don't even remember how many years ago, whenever Zendikar block was out. It's probably like four to six years ago or something like that.
3 blocks ago, so 3 years ago, right? Innistrad, Scars, and Zendikar.
Is that all it is? God, it felt like it was a lot more
Probably
than
4 years ago now because we're approaching this October.
All right, well, anyway, that tournament did not have... It felt like a lot of people at the time, but it probably wasn't more than like a few hundred. And the room was just like packed. And it was at a convention center. So
there were some empty tables, but it still felt like there were definitely a lot of people there.
mhm.
I do remember there were empty tables there, but it still had tons of people there, and yeah, I think it was 800.
And I mean
Or
that
so.
was it was like less than 1,000.
Yeah.
And this is like so many times more than that. Like, can you imagine how long it would take them to get all of the games organized every round? You know, for that matching and making sure that all the pairings are correct.
Yeah.
45, looking through 4,500 pieces of paper to.
The other thing is like deck checking and stuff like that.
Doing deck checks
because you do have to register your deck in this event.
Like, it would have to be extremely well staffed. But I mean, I have to say I'm pretty happy that
they have got to have 1 million judges there.
That is so crazy, though. It's been 20 years since this game's inception, and this is the largest Magic tournament ever. So it's pretty impressive that Magic has managed to gain more audience in 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
See, I've always kind of felt like, and I'm sure it's eventually going to happen. I don't know how they can't hit a wall at some point.
Yeah.
But they're just going to be maintaining their long-term players. Like, the game will always have an existence because they'll always have the player base that's been diehard since the beginning, you know? Because they're constantly coming out with new sets.
And even eventually you could just move to strictly online if your like paper sales died out, because online, you know,
doesn't really cost them that much anyway to maintain. Yeah, but it totally is like that's how they maintain their early player base, is just always appealing to the long-term players, you know, making them desire to keep playing the game. But bringing in new audiences is going to be more difficult because there's so many other games to experience now, you know what I mean? And there's all these MMOs and other popular stuff. And I guess a lot of Magic players probably also play MMOs. But I guess the point is the younger audience. Like, is Magic always going to be able to get the younger audience? And that's sort of up in the air whether it will or not.
This aspect of like this genre just has to be appealing to that generation, you know. If like the fantasy aspect goes out of like vogue for young boys, like let's be honest, you know.
Yeah, younger dudes, then it probably then that's where you're going to see
then that will be where the
drying it
happens.
up. Yeah, that's true. Is fantasy just as appealing to the younger generations as it ever was? I don't know.
The thing about it is that you also, because you have the plane system in like working for you, whatever is in vogue, you can go and do that. Like,
that's true.
Twilight came out, and then Innistrad came out.
Yeah, you're right.
Know?
They definitely did some market researching on what kind of audience to grab their audience. That's actually a really good point. So, because the planes aspect of the game really lets you go
anywhere,
any direction,
anywhere you want to take the game.
Yeah.
And like Zendikar, you could argue that appeals to like D&D players, you know, because of the kind of build a party with the allies, and you know that whole system was directly linked to that.
And Level Up, I felt like, was a total like RPG sort of,
and the equipment,
ability
like the fact that equipment was like such a big part of that set, even though it wasn't like an artifact set. That was also because of their adventure, you know, role playing kind of feel that they wanted to give it.
So it doesn't seem like they really originally. How do you feel like the flavor of the sets were designed? The really old sets, like Antiquities, and they already had like a prearranged story involving like Urza and Mishra.
Yeah, definitely. Initially, they were doing a lot more top-down design, and I think once Legends came out, they didn't necessarily have a full story. They just were like, let's print gold cards and let's print Legends, you know. And
it seems like all the old
Arabian
cards.
Nights is almost like taken directly from, you know,
I think
1001 Arabian Nights.
Absolutely. I was just going to say that. It's if you look at the old sets, the cards designs, it was just pulling from all sorts of different cultures.
Well, Frankenstein's monster.
All different cultures, folklore. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how they originally designed it. Now they're taking a lot more creative liberties. They're involving like, you know, obviously a writing staff that's coming up with cool, really intricate storylines and doing shout outs to the past. seeing which sets were most popular so they can design like return sets.
Return to those.
It's they're doing it the best way they can. I think they're doing it in a really smart way.
And I'm really glad that they, instead of deciding to go with real world things, which they've done a lot of actual real world mirrors or whatever, they've decided to go this real world thing, but then let's really just put our own feel to it, you know. Like Kamigawa is very
Japanese,
feudal Japanese, you know, but it definitely is still magic, you know.
Yeah.
And it feels really cool to look at those cards, in my opinion. I really like the look of that set, you know, and it evokes that feeling of feudal Japan, you know. So
totally.
You already
Bushido.
Yeah, and you
the mechanic is like a Japanese like word that doesn't even really translate to Western culture, where it's just like an honorable way of fighting.
Yeah, but because we have like this context to draw upon, then we can apply that to that, and it actually fills in all the holes where they don't have to explain things to us either. You know, they don't have to explain that on this plane, this is how this works, you know. This is a feudal Japanese plane. None of the flavor text says that. You can see the cards and see it, and so you know how these people would react and how their honor-bound system is, and you know, how they have like the boss of this, and you can just understand that boss of this means you control that land, you know. It's boss, whatever the name of the boss is in that storyline. But still, you know, it really allows for us as players to fill in the holes with the information that we already have because it's part of our history and our culture. And it allows them to go further into character development.
That's true.
Without having to
they're getting,
explain.
They're getting really good at it too. And you know, we've already talked about how Theros is where they're going. Spilled some coffee on yourself, Sam. Theros they're going to in the fall is going to be Greek.
Yeah, they
mythology.
said, or Zach Hill apparently said, this is what I heard, so it's a rumor, don't quote me, that there were going to be 60 legendary cards, over 60 legendary cards, something like that.
60 legendary cards?
Yeah, it's going to be maybe a legendary themed set or a legend themed set.
That's really cool. They also did that in Kamigawa too. That was a weird set because there were a lot of uncommon legends, right?
Yeah, and they felt like they screwed up with Kamigawa though.
Why?
Because I personally think it's because they were pulled in a couple different directions. They wanted to make it legendary theme, but then they had this story to explain as what was going on, so they had to put that spirit theme in and really push that theme. But also, it was right on the heels of Mirrodin, and so they depowered hard. They didn't like slow decline on the power level. They just were like, okay, well, we like overpowered Mirrodin, we have to depower now.
Yeah, that was right.
And so they like just pulled the plug, and everything was super expensive. And
and they made Kamigawa a weaker set. That's true. They made it like totally underpowered, so then it was like almost unexciting.
Yeah, like exactly. So you didn't really see a lot of tournaments where a ton of Kamigawa cards showed up in the tournaments because the Mirrodin cards were just so much better.
We've had sets kind of be blanks before. I feel like when Scars came out, it didn't really impact Standard very much at all. I remember that was a common complaint for people when Scars first came out, because you had Zendikar block still, which was just crazy insane, and then Scars block came out, and you still had Cobblade. There was like, you didn't need anything. I mean, there was a few additions from Scars block, namely, like, well, from the full block, definitely, with, like, Batterskull and stuff. But just
once
when
you
Scars
got the
block,
first good sword,
just when Scars block came out, it really didn't impact Standard that much.
Wormcoil was probably, like, the biggest
addition. Yeah, that might be right.
But that didn't even, like, see a ton of play initially either.
No, it didn't.
And that's the really funny thing about that.
There was definitely a blue-white control that was still on top, and this is before...
Well, Jace was around, and Gideon. So you had like the two power planeswalkers that worked well together. Then you gave them Venser too. And so they even have like Oblivion Rings, or they could bounce your guy twice and then blink out their Jace. You know what I mean? And just reset the bounce. So Venser did play into that strategy a little more. Even Gideon
a little bit,
worked.
Totally.
Like, to blink out and reset his power.
Yeah, Gids it's always been really, really good.
Hmm.
I mean, we sort of went on a tirade there,
Yeah.
but that is still pretty crazy that Magic has come such a long way,
Hmm.
and it has changed so much creatively since its inception, where it was initially just trying to draw audiences in with old human culture, you know, references.
Yeah.
And then they turned it into some creative offspins, you know, spin-offs that are like references still from things, but like you said, added a little more creativity to it themselves. So it's kind of cool. Last week we were going through old sets and we made some rather horrific discoveries about Alpha, yeah. So we were looking through old cards, and what we found was old wording from Alpha. The initial set was pretty unbelievable on some cards, and how narrow their abilities were. The one that immediately comes to mind is Gloom, which, I mean, now it's...
You really have to remember that this was the absolute first set made, and everything was only in context of the other cards in that set, because they were not expecting to go further with it in that way, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, with that in mind, yes, they made some really terrible, like, wording choices at that time, too. Huh.
It's interesting. Well, that looks like it's working. Well,
doesn't want us to look up Alpha.
I guess not, but I want to, so it can't stop me. But we could also look up, like, I wouldn't even mind Arabian Nights. That was the first set. I'm sure there's some broken color pie in there, too. But
there's some really bad ones in Arabian Nights.
They're really fun to look at because, wow, I'm really surprised. All right, I guess we're going to Star City. I've never actually seen the Gather completely down. I'm kind of like late to the game on magiccards.info, but
was saying this.
Yeah, this is, well, maybe this lets you look up editions too. That's kind of cool. But
color identity not right there.
Edition, yeah, limited sets alpha.
So it'll probably be all the way at the bottom, or like, sorry.
Yeah, this is pretty entertaining. Well, I'm gonna be searching for this, but why don't you talk about Arabian Nights anyway? That was the first block they made. What was in it? You said it was almost directly lifted from 1000, whatever that Arabian...
1001, I think, is what it's called. 1001 Arabian Nights.
Stories, yeah. It was supposed to be 1001 different stories. But, like, name some of the cards from it that you remember, kind of what that set probably...
Sinbad is, like, really notable as being specifically... Well, this was before Legends, too. A named character that wasn't legendary, and you could have multiple Sinbads out at once. So I think they actually had made all these call-out creatures that were, you know, literally characters from these stories, and then I don't think they liked it after they did it and saw how it looked in action. So they, that's when they came out with, well, they came out with Antiquities between that in the meantime, but then they came out with Legends and actually introduced Legends. But there's also Ali from Cairo, which was really notable weird red ability of you can't go below 1 life. And
yeah, he was a weird one. Looks like I finally got it working on magiccards.info. So I'm gonna be a little bit off on the order, I guess. But
we've already done pretty much all the white and blue, right?
I don't know, probably. I think we were doing it alphabetically because it was before they had collector's numbers, so they just do it. I guess they just do it alphabetically then. I don't know. Well, maybe they
updated.
Okay.
To be the way that everything else is now.
Well, Air Elemental is actually still printed occasionally now, and it's still actually a really good card. So that's actually really strong at the time too. I feel like.
It's a really big card.
It's maintained its strength well over time. I mean, a 5-mana 4/4 flyer is still super playable in limited. And when was the last
Look
time
at
they
the-
printed it? They printed it last in 10th edition. It's been that long.
That seems strange.
It's a really good card.
Yeah, I thought
They've
it was.
definitely. Don't you feel like most of the
Well,
flyers
now
they
have
print
Air
are weaker
Servant.
now?
Yeah, Air Servant is even, I guess, weaker in a vacuum. You know.
I guess that's true. But Air Elemental always felt really good in limited.
Yeah.
Ancestral Recall. The reason that the alpha edition of this is so funny is because it says draw 3 cards or force opponent to draw 3 cards.
Go on, do it.
Like it's punishing them.
Uh-huh.
So, and I guess we should talk about Ancestral Recall was actually part of the earliest
This
cycles.
is one of the first cycles. I
Mhm.
mean, obviously they have the dual land cycle. This is one of the first cycles also that's like straight up a hard cycle of 1 mana for 3 of something, and in each color. Ancestral Recall is the blue one. Healing Salve is the white one.
which
Black-
is prevent 3 or gain 3 life.
Yeah, black got Dark Ritual. Green
Add
got
3 to your mana pool.
green got Giant Growth plus
Plus
3
3, yeah.
plus 3, and red got Lightning Bolt.
3
So-
damage.
Clearly, like, Healing Salve is the worst of the lot.
Yep.
You know, but
The other 4 actually
all of the other 4 are way overpowered. Actually,
Yeah.
I mean, not Giant Growth. Giant Growth is totally legit.
Still printed today
Yeah.
because it's so good.
Yeah.
You know?
hmm
What does that tell you?
But it is just a totally legit card. You know, it requires you to have something else on the board already to make use of it. You know, Ancestral Recall is obviously the best, and then I would say Lightning Bolt and Dark Ritual are second place.
But cycles have been a part of the game from the beginning, and they are still done today. So that's
It is
kind of cool.
It's a good way to show how each color would do something, you know,
Mhm.
in these like restrictions or whatever. With these restrictions.
With these abilities.
Yeah.
Yeah. How it just assigning the number 3 and then
Mhm.
1 mana cost
And
is
how,
all it took,
right.
and then you make your own cycle, and you can see that they're all sort of related to each other. It's cool.
Yeah, it's also funny that Brainstorm is supposed to be the fix to Ancestral Recall and to close that cycle out, but Brainstorm is still like one of the best draw spells ever printed too.
Yeah, well, that's true. Let's talk about Animate Dead, only because it's really amusing what had to happen to this card, and it's amusing now, but it'd be cool if they could do this right in some way, because it definitely feels too odd now the way they have to word it. But let me explain. Let me explain what I'm talking
I think
about.
that Necromancy is the right way to do it. So-
Probably. Well, let's just talk about the problem with Animate Dead is listeners may not know, you know. So it's the initial wording on it was 2 mana, any creature in either player's graveyard comes into play on your side with -1 to its original power. God, the wording is phenomenal on Alpha. If this enchantment is removed or at end of game, target creature is returned to its owner's graveyard. Target creature may be killed as normal.
At end
Killed.
At end of
They
game.
use the word killed on it.
At end of game.
But-
now put this in your graveyard at the end of the game.
Or at end of game. Make sure you remind them. Wait, does this stay on the game's over?
Dude,
right?
I gain ownership of this, right? That's how this works.
I guess Auntie was at the time, so maybe
Yeah,
people were
I know.
confused.
And
It's funny.
anti is like such a terrible idea.
But now the upgraded wording to this is enchant creature card in a graveyard. When Animate Dead enters the battlefield, if it's on the battlefield, it loses enchant creature card in a graveyard and gains enchant creature put into the battle onto the battlefield with Animate Dead. Return enchanted creature card to the battlefield under your control and attach Animate Dead to it. When Animate Dead leaves the battlefield, that creature's controller sacrifices it. Enchanted creature gets -1/-0. Way too much wording. It's very confusing. The whole reason they had to do that is because it initially targets a creature in a graveyard. A creature card, it has to specifically have to be able to
The problem
target a
is
creature
that
card
it's
in a
an
graveyard.
aura. That's
And then
what the
when it
problem is.
enters, it becomes an aura.
Yeah. No,
So-
it is an aura. It starts off as an aura. That's what the problem is.
Yeah, so what it should have been is either a sorcery or like Jake said, a necromancy, which is what is the wording? The exact wording on necromancy. It's just a 3 mana enchantment that comes in and targets a creature in a
Flash
graveyard.
And
2 and a black. You may cast necromancy as though it had flash. If you cast at any time a sorcery couldn't have been cast, the controller of the permanent becomes sacrifices it at the beginning of the next cleanup step. This is horrible wording.
Yeah.
I had no idea this was all screwed up too.
Yeah.
When necromancy enters the battlefield, if it's on the battlefield, it becomes an aura with enchant creature put onto the battlefield as necromancy. Put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control and attach necromancy to it. When necromancy leaves the battlefield, that creature's controller sacrifices it. There's a novel. They wouldn't even be able to fit this.
I feel like they could just put in with enchant creature on it, and then attach that creature from the graveyard. Like, why can't they just do that?
Why does it have to be an aura on the... It doesn't make sense.
Well, this one doesn't. Animate Dead would have to be, because Animate Dead gives it -1/-0, you know?
Yeah, but you could just say put a -1/-0 counter on it
No,
or
you
something.
can't.
Why couldn't you?
Because that's not a legit counter type anymore, I don't think.
Well, then I guess change it to -1/-1
or not even do it.
Or -1 plus
like, is it so bad to have something that your opponent can target on the battlefield to destroy and get rid of your creature? You know, so they actually can have 2 different removal spells to get rid of your creature now. You know what I'm saying? Just having the enchantment out there. Like, look up Diabolic Servitude.
What's that one?
It's probably the best way to do it as an enchantment.
Why am I even using this website? It's not good. When Diabolic Servitude enters the battlefield, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. When the creature put onto the battlefield with Diabolic Servitude dies, exile it and return Diabolic Servitude to its owner's hand. When it leaves the battlefield, exile the creature put onto the battlefield with it. Okay. So you get a creature from your graveyard back to the battlefield, and then when the creature was put onto the battlefield, when that creature dies, exile it and return it to this card to your hand. And when this leaves the battlefield, exile the creature put onto the battlefield. I see. Yeah, this is a cool card.
And, like, obviously they just have that middle part in there. But, you know, you could just have it be the first part and the last part.
Yeah, I feel like this could be super playable in...
this is a really good card.
In Commander.
Yeah.
Especially, I like that. But Animate Dead is... the reason it's so ridiculous is because it's 2 mana and it does in either player's graveyard. So this is played in Legacy, right? This is totally straight up Reanimator Legacy deck. Played this and whatever
this gets played in
and straight up
Reanimate.
and Reanimate, which is 1 mana. You lose life. You return a creature card from your graveyard, though,
Any
right?
graveyard.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's so good. Sorcery speed, 1 black. Return a creature card from a graveyard to the battlefield under your control. Lose life equal to its converted mana cost.
Yeah, they can't really print that much anymore. A little too good.
Yeah.
Especially since creatures have gotten, like, that on a Grisso brand. It's so dirty.
Yeah, there's so much. Creatures are so much better now. So it is. And that is one of the primary res targets in
You lose a life, but then you get to gain it back, or you can just draw 7.
Well, and you most likely haven't lost much life already. So even if you're at 10 life, you know, you're still
worth it. So Animate Dead. Really amazing. And, I mean, it doesn't break color it just breaks like power level by today's standards. They really don't go below 4 mana on a straight up res spell. They have the 3 mana one coming out from M14, but it requires that something died that turn. That creature that you're resing died that turn. So
which actually seems a little more white to me than black. You know? Because it's like black should be able to raise a corpse. White should only be able to, like, revive someone who's recently died. You know?
I guess. Well, do you know the...
It is an instant, I guess.
What's the name of the card?
I don't know it.
Let's find out. Say... We've gone over it before. Grim Return. So it has to be an instant, I guess. It doesn't have to be, but it's good that it's an instant. It makes it way more...
Well, you can use it on your opponent's turn even if they kill one of your creatures.
Yeah, it actually becomes something to do in combat now, where it's like, oh, okay, we make a trade and I'm getting your guy back.
Yeah.
So choose target creature card in a graveyard that was put there from the battlefield this turn. Put that card onto the battlefield under your control. It's 3 mana, rare, instant. So it's 3 mana. So that is an exception to the 4 mana rule. But for the most part, it's pretty much Zombify, Rise from the Grave. It's 4 or 5 mana.
But this one
Sometimes
has a
they tack
huge
it on.
restriction. So
They tag it on with like 6 mana double ability spells, like Breaking Entering, stuff like that. So it's rezzing is pretty expensive nowadays. Do you like that? I mean, on Burial Rites, you get the double use.
I don't really mind that they've gone up in casting cost on res spells because
Resin can be so
res
powerful with
for
your...
one, and they had reanimate. Then they printed life, and they still are death. I mean, they thought that death was still fine.
It's just called Death?
Right there.
Oh, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. You lose life equal to its convert mana cost. At least this one was your graveyard only.
Yeah, but it's a cheap reanimate. You know.
That's true.
For 2 mana. I guess
that's a good point. So this must have been pretty highly played since it's only 2 mana.
I mean, you're mostly rezzing from your own graveyard anyway.
Well, they had to experiment a little bit. I mean, this was from Apocalypse, so that was still quite a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Life Death is interesting since the two abilities don't really seem to interact with each other very much.
Yeah. But
they sort of made the fuse cards
the fuse cards interact with each other, but none of these really did. They all actually did a really different thing. And this one is like you can have a horde of creatures 1 turn, or you can get back 1 big creature 1 turn.
What do you like more? The completely different abilities or the interact with each other?
This allows for you to do a lot more, you know. But the interact with each other is only good on fuse, you know.
I mean, even if they interact with each other, they can still, a lot of times, I've noticed they're useful on their own. There's some exceptions.
But think of turn and burn and how frustrating it is not to fuse it sometimes.
It's true. It's only frustrating because you know how much more value you could get. I mean, it's a double combat trick a lot of the times. Where it's like, kill that, and that becomes 0/1. Kill that on block, or defense, or attack.
Yeah, but what if they had been like totally different things? Like how Fire and Ice is, where one side of it is the kill spell, and the other side is just like a draw spell that like neutralizes them.
Well, Fire and Ice was dirty too because you did it on their lands, and you got to cantrip, so it was it was like straight up
tempo.
Yeah, it was huge tempo. So a lot of mistakes have been made, I guess, but
Ice is not terrible.
No, not by any means. You're right. It's still a sick card.
It is a very good card. Fire and Ice is really good.
I like it more than Turn and Burn only because you cantrip off of it.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You know, and I actually like it more than Turn and Burn too because I feel like it has a lot more uses even because Turn and Burn
is really good too. I mean, I don't know. I might not be right about that. It's actually tough to say. So does White always interact? Did they always interact with walls? Animate Wall is enchanted wall can attack as though it didn't have Defender. Sadly, this is way more useless now. Well, the initial plan with Defender cards were they were just going to be walls. That's how they
would call them wall instead of giving them Defender or giving them an ability.
And obviously that limited stuff because you would have.
Well, and this was also
you wouldn't be able to do creatures with Defender like the Perimeter Captain type cards.
It was a time when they didn't do double creature types, so you couldn't have a human wall or something. Whereas wall there is just like literally to give it Defender. You know, they didn't do that. So a lot of their walls were just named Wall of Blank, you know?
Anime Wall alpha wording is so funny. Target wall can now attack. Target wall's power and toughness are unchanged, even if its power is 0. Why would it say
Why
that?
would it even have to say that? So, like, even if its power is 0, it's unchanged?
Why would they have to specify that? No one was asking.
Yeah,
there was no question. So, and the picture's kind of funny too. It's a very, very retro picture.
Dan Frazier.
Very entertaining. It's like a woman.
She's either enchanting it or she's scared of it. I can't.
No, I feel good point. I thought she was the one enchanting it. I kind of feel like she's the one that's doing it.
Okay.
But it's a picture of this like almost.
It's a stoic looking frowny face wall.
It is a frowny face wall.
What is that? Angry cat?
But look at his his little arms. He's got like little arms.
And his feet. Like, what's he gonna do? Like, do this motion over to you.
Maybe fall on him. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even know how he moves. Good point. He just wheels around. But he's got like vines.
Look at his feet, dude.
He's got like
he has
vines.
a foot.
He does have a foot. He's got like vines growing around him. It's
What
a
is
really
that
funny
gonna
old
do
school
with it?
picture.
Yeah.
Ankh of Mishra was
This is a
2
really
mana,
interesting card.
does 2 damage to anyone who puts a new land into play. Wow, nice wording. Puts a new land into, not an old one.
It's got lots of play on it.
So Ankh of Mishra, that is a cool card. Continuous artifact. Continuous.
I know.
Oh god.
But that was because they didn't have tap as like
a symbol yet.
They had it as a word.
In alpha, they did not have the symbol for tap, which was a really, I mean, the tapping aspect of the game is very unique to Magic. Magic was the first one that had the idea of using a card as a resource for a turn that you can expend, using it like a currency almost.
Mm-hmm.
Having a currency that refills itself.
It's a really good way to pace out the game. You know, to have the land or the mana resource and tapping aspect of it.
Really good idea.
Mm-hmm.
But there were continuous artifacts, there were poly artifacts, mono artifacts.
Yeah, poly
was you could use it.
Did they really do poly? I thought it was just continuous and mono.
I have
just
to
keep looking through that.
Well, I don't. It's not in. It doesn't look like it's in. It's in straight up alphabetical order here. So, well, we'll run.
I guess if it had an activated ability, it would be called poly artifact. If it didn't require it to tap, you know.
Oh, so you could use it multiple times in one turn. Yeah.
And if it had an activated ability that required it to tap, it would be a mono artifact.
Well, Armageddon clearly broke color by.
Well, it does in the way that it hates on lands, but it doesn't in the way that it's.
White's interacted with lands before with like balance and stuff.
But balance is from the set too. White also just does the indiscriminate destruction.
Well, it tells you that they. Yeah, I guess that's true. There's also like Archon of Justice that can hit lands, so they have ways to get lands because they can hit almost any permanent.
Well, they even printed Catastrophe in Urza's Saga. That's destroy all lands, you know, as one of the modes that you can choose. And then limited resources, which is nobody can have more than 5 lands out, and they sack down to 5 once it comes out.
I feel like in general they've strayed away from land destruction. They've made that strategy sort of antiquated. I think they've gotten rid of it. They've sort of cycled that out. I think a lot of people thought it was an unfun strategy to play.
Think of Armageddon in comparison to Stone Rain too.
Well, the problem with Armageddon as a 4 mana destroy all lands. I mean, that's like that's so insane. If you have like 3 creatures in the first 3 turns, and then you do your turn 4 Armageddon destroy. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, but
it can actually do it at
white strategies too.
I know White Weenie could just be like, okay, creature, Imperial Armor, Armageddon,
Imperial Armor. Yeah,
it's just dirty. So I think getting rid of that Armageddon destroy all lands effect in White is
get that out of White. I don't even like that.
No, in general.
And I like that they put it up to about 7 mana now, I think, and everybody sacks 5 lands.
They have it in red.
Kind of effect.
They do have that sort of nutty destroy everything effect in red, and it's usually like
red should have the destroy everything effect, and white should get, you know, destroy all of this one type, but not destroy all of lands.
I don't like it. I don't like.
I agree.
Destroy all lands
I don't like
general,
destroy all lands. I think that
even
is
on
really
a Johnny Vengeant, that ultimate felt really too
good. Is it
target
opponent or is it your opponent's?
Find out. Target player.
Okay.
Very strong.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do it to your teammates or yourself too, if you want. Oops. Aspect of Wolf feels fine in green. It's just plus X plus Y. Is the original wording on it pretty horrendous?
Yeah.
Increased by half the number of force you have in play, rounding down for power and up for toughness. Why would you do that? Let's do round up and down for one or the other. Make it more confusing.
I know.
So unnecessary.
Well, why not just make it equal to the power or the number of forests you control? Because it was a rare too.
There's not a lot of cards in black like Bad Moon, are there? I feel like that one's actually pretty unique. That's a green ability or a white ability now. Mostly white, but
they used to want black to be like the other weenie color and be good at it, you know? So it was like white and black both had weenies.
Yeah.
And I think it
Black
was
Knight, White Knight.
White Knight, Black Knight was like it was that thing that kind of set that ball in motion actually, because they wanted them to be like the good and evil armies, you know. But they really strayed away from that and started making black creatures generally more shitty. I mean, now black creatures are pretty good. You can definitely still play black-red zombies or black-red aggro in standard right now. But
this also affects, the thing about Bad Moon was it affects your opponent's black creatures too. So there were times where Bad Moon felt really bad, but other than that, a 2-mana all black creatures in play game +1/+1 get +1/+1. It's really strong. It's a cheap. I mean, it's like Honor of the Pure, pretty much, except it affected
your opponents sometimes.
But still, yeah. So this is not in black anymore. Black now is like powerful, slow, but really powerful spells. A lot of destruction plus life gain, sort of like life sucking.
Yeah,
sort of.
They don't necessarily get really efficient creatures because their destruction is the most efficient.
Yeah. Now, in fact, they have the worst creatures.
Yeah.
Although, when's the last time they brought back Black Knight? I guess we'll see it soon enough, but I feel...
They still do the black-white mirror, like Knight of Infamy and Knight of Valor or whatever. Oh!
Birds of Paradise was funny because of how they...
Double backslash?
Yeah, so if you look at the alpha Birds of Paradise, it says flying, and then it has double backslash, tap to add 1 mana to your mana pool. This tap may be played as an interrupt. God, anytime they had to say interrupt, just made me sad.
Thank God they got rid of that.
Yeah, they needed to. But it's really weird seeing this double backslash. I'm wondering if there's other examples of this. I guess if the card has an evergreen ability plus another ability, they have to do the backslash to separate it. Or is this unique to Birds of Paradise?
I think it's because it's a tap ability. They wanted to make sure that you didn't think that you had to give it flying and then tap it, or something like that.
Maybe. Here's Black Knight. So Black Knight, they actually last reprinted in... Really? They printed it in M11? Or that's pretty impressive. So, despite Black having the least efficient creatures, Black Knight was always a very efficient creature, an excellent creature. Actually, M13, they even did the 2-mana, 2/1 Exalted.
Knight of Infamy and Knight of Valor.
Oh, is that what you said?
Yeah.
I didn't remember their names. I wasn't thinking of what they were. So they're both the Exalted Knights. I'm actually trying to decide which one I like more. Do I like the Exalted Knights more, or do I like the First Strike ability more?
I like First Strike more.
I think I like First Strike more too. I do like that Exalted works with your other creatures.
That you played the turn before.
Well, it's sick that it's like, okay, I'm going to attack with this guy. I'm going to leave back my protection guy untapped. You know, Vigilance would almost be a better one than both. So, since it would make the protection more relevant on defense and offense.
Yeah, that's true.
But Black Knight, very efficient. I always like that picture. It's a really cool, like, looking knight.
Old school style knight.
Old school knight, riding just this black steed. It's a crazy castle in the background. He's got, like, a crazy grinning demon thing on his shield.
Yeah.
It's just a cool picture.
It is. I really like this one, too.
Very nostalgic. Black Lotus, of course. Black Vice. Now, this one's interesting. Do you feel like this card was too powerful at 1 mana, or?
Yes.
Okay, so Black Vice was 1 mana. As it enters the battlefield, choose an opponent. At the beginning of the chosen player's upkeep, Black Vice deals X damage to that player, where X is the number of cards in his or her hand, -4. A little bit confusing, but basically, if they had 5, 6, or 7 mana in their hand, Black Vice would deal 1, 2, or 3 damage accordingly.
This is one of those times when I feel like the original wording is actually it clears it up a lot more than their updated wording.
The original alpha wording on it was, if opponent has more than 4 cards in hand during upkeep, Black Vice deals lowercase Black Vice does 1 damage to opponent for each card in excess of 4. Yeah, that's actually not that confusing when you word it like that. This is always a funny picture because it's like a little doll being crushed by a black vice. But I've never seen a vice that has sharp, like, spikes coming out of it.
These are like torture devices. That's the whole point.
But why is it just like a dummy on there?
They're not going to show like a person being eviscerated. The Richard Thomas dummy shows up in like a lot of his art too.
Oh, I see. It is kind of a cool looking dummy.
It's in, well, we'll see the rack, and then it's also in Leshrak's Right from Ice Age, Cursed Rack from Antiquities.
Interesting. So it kept bringing it back, huh?
Wall of Wonder, even.
I mean, I guess we need to mention there were problems initially with magic, and like making moms upset, right? Because it was like they thought it was too demonic or something. It was sort of the same problem that Dungeons and Dragons had in the like 60s with people thinking it was demonic. Unholy Strength, the card, I'll show you the alpha version of it real quick, I guess. The alpha version had a pentagram in the background that was on fire. And they actually had to get rid of that for the unlimited version?
No,
I guess it was...
4th edition was the first time they took it out.
Okay, so it was even in revised, I see. But 3rd and 4th edition came around
and then it doesn't make any sense.
They actually took out the pentagram, which is really interesting.
It made it through quite a few printings. 4 of the original core sets had it before 4th edition.
And they still bring it back. It was in M11.
They just don't put the burning pentagram in.
Yeah, so do you think that was necessary? Do you think they would even do something like that?
Well,
nowadays?
they have openly said that was a different time, you know, and that was like a different concern with the American people than what it is now, you know.
Because they show violence on cards now. What's like an actual violent card that you can think of? I mean, Disintegrate was an early one. I felt like that was a pretty violent looking card. I mean, you're straight up seeing the skeleton and all the flesh and coming off of...
That was a really sweet looking card.
It is a sweet looking card, but I mean, that was around the same time. They weren't offended by that. That's pretty gory.
Yeah. They were offended by Lord of the Pit.
What was wrong with the picture in that?
It was Demon. That was the problem.
It's cool looking. I didn't realize how crazy he looks. He's very... It's almost like Freddy Krueger, like all those organs and meat and sinew and muscle.
Yeah.
It's really...
exposed.
Yeah, it's creepy looking.
Marquee.
They had a problem with that one, too? That's just
Demon.
weird.
They had a problem with demons.
Oh. Too demonic?
Yes.
Is Blaze of Glory on color pie? I don't even remember this card. Oh, yeah, that's cool. Okay. It's a crazy picture.
Yeah, it is.
It's like a dude with a huge battle axe and all these nuts-looking monsters like looking down on him because he can block them all.
Has to block them all, too.
Blessing was a cool card. Why do you think they got rid of it after 4th edition? Was something wrong with it?
I think they wanted to move it into black.
They've had similar cards. What was the one in Lorwyn where you can put a +1/+1 counter on it? It's like...
Oh, yeah.
It's like...
Daily Regimen.
Yeah, Daily Regimen.
The opposite of torture.
Oh, yeah, that's right. But I feel like that's kind of in the same vein as Blessing.
It is.
It's a little more clunky.
Yeah.
But you do get permanent. You get them permanently.
Yeah, and the cost is inverted. It's 1 to cast it, 2 to pump it. But I like that one more than Blessing, in my opinion. In my opinion, Daily Regimen is like a better white card.
But it's kind of interesting that they didn't bring it back after 4th edition. I feel like it's still definitely white. It could be. I guess, do they not have pump effects in white very often anymore?
They don't get the shade pump that often.
I guess not the shade pump. They do get the defense pump quite frequently.
Yeah. But that was on Holy Armor, which was just a sick card back then.
Yeah. So I guess you're right. Maybe they just don't do straight up shade effect anymore. But it's funny, in black it's actually shades form, it's just 3 mana instead of 2.
But you also get the card back when it dies.
Oh, is that what it was? I didn't realize that. Blue Elemental Blast definitely works. However, the red Elemental Blast, I mean, you said it works, but I don't...
See, they both have a problem. Like,
I guess
blue shouldn't be able to outright destroy red. You know, it should only be able to counter red spells. And vice versa.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we talked about the
red has counter
guttural
blue
response.
Spells.
Yeah.
It has burnout. Red has burnout too.
So they've had it. It's been a while, I guess.
Mhm.
Shadowmoor. Is that when Guttural Responsible? I think it was, right?
Mhm.
Bogwraith feels fine. Brain Geyser. Is this card too good?
No.
It's not too good anymore, right?
No, they've proven they're willing to do target player. I mean they've reprinted Stroke of Genius. That doesn't go away. You know.
Stroke of Genius was an instant, and Brain Geyser was 2 blue and X, draw X cards. Or target player draws X cards. It's an actual
Mind
Oracle text.
Spring, you know, but only you can't target your opponent. And how often did you target your opponent with this?
And why didn't they let people use Mind Spring on... Why can't you use Mind Spring on your opponent?
I don't know. Because Mind Shatter is target player.
Oh, is it?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. And Mind Spring is draw X cards. Interesting. I guess maybe just to keep the text simple.
I think also they wanted to try bringing it back, and they didn't. It could be that. But it also, like, that was the first the first time that we saw the draw X cards thing again since Stroke of Genius, I think, even.
Interesting. I don't think it's overpowered. It's very good.
I don't think
in
it's
limited,
overpowered at all.
It's very strong and limited. She digging her claws in?
She's killing me today.
What's her problem? I don't know. That's weird.
She's enjoying herself. That's what it is.
Burrowing.
I always like that picture.
It's a cool picture. Why would it have, like...
Why would it need that?
With the claws, especially, yeah.
It's like clearly already a mole.
That's how it attacks. Yeah, it's supposed to be like a fantasy mole, I guess.
I guess.
So it's got a unicorn horn on its head.
Unimole?
It's a funny picture.
Camouflage we talked about.
Yeah. Castle, they brought back with a different name now. What set did
Builder's Blessing.
Yeah, in Avacyn Restored.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why did they not call it Castle?
Because Castle has had multiple wordings. Untapped creatures you control get +0/+2. Untapped creatures get +0/+2 while not attacking.
Oh, they've had different wording on it? Is that right?
It was while not attacking up until 7th. I think even in 6th edition it was still...
Unless it's... Why would they...
Because you're in your castle, that's why you're defended, not while you're out of it. That was why it was... You know, it doesn't really make sense to give attacking creatures the bonus. But...
Wait, so where did they...
7th edition is the first time they switched it out, I think. I look at the 6th edition version. No, okay, so 6th edition was the first
That's
time.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
That they did that.
And that's really funny that for 6th edition they went back to the original art when the David O'Connor art is really, really good.
You like this one?
Yeah.
That is kind of a cool picture. But that's a weird example of a card that's straight up, they've just changed the ability on it.
But Builder's Blessing doesn't make any sense either. Like, why should you get that bonus while you're, while you're attacking?
I see. Is that, I don't, is it different? I didn't even realize that. Let me look now.
Yeah, Builder's Blessing is the current wording of...
Oh, okay.
The current wording of Castle.
Oh, I see. So they could have done Castle.
Yeah, they could have done Castle. They just chose not to. They really just should have called it something else, and done it where it was like the whole army was bolstered with some sort of ethereal.
I didn't even feel like Builder's Blessing was super playable.
It's not.
In limited, even.
I just don't even like the name.
It was playable. I just don't feel like it was very good. It didn't need to be. I think the problem was it didn't need to be untapped creatures. It could have just been.
I think untapped creatures already specifies, for the most part, that your attacking creatures aren't getting this bonus. And that's why they got rid of it.
Yep, just Vigilance would be the only.
And it's in white, and it's mostly in white.
But a card with Vigilance should be able to stay in his castle and attack.
Mm-hmm.
Like Spear Throwers, Archers.
Wait. Oh, no, that was...
Channel. Well, here's the thing about Channel. It didn't necessarily break Color Pie, but definitely broke power level. So Channel is 2 green. Until end of turn, anytime you could activate a mana ability, you may pay 1 life. If you do, add 1 to your mana pool.
Wow.
Is that how they had to word it? I don't get it. Why was it anytime you could activate a mana ability, you may pay 1 life?
Because, I don't know. Which is really funny because you can activate a mana ability at any time anyway.
I don't get it. That's really strange. It doesn't add it. Why could they couldn't make it add the mana itself? It had to be, you had to add a, I don't, that's really strange.
What do you mean?
Until in turn, anytime you could activate a mana ability. This, I don't understand this line. Anytime you could activate a mana ability.
So the original channel lets you do it in the middle of a spell resolving. And that's the only reason they're saying anytime you could activate a mana ability. Because you have to wait for a spell to resolve completely before you can activate an ability.
I see. I don't know. I guess it just, it's sad that they had to do that. But channel, they're not, they're...
These editions are played with the speed of an interrupt.
Wow. Original wording is pretty funny. Life spent this way is not considered damage. Thanks, channel.
Yeah. Oh, I think it was probably because people were like, circle of protection.
Protecting myself in my own channel so I can do it infinitely. Yeah, people were probably confused back in those days. It's funny, before they had all these standardized rules, it was really like people played kitchen table Magic and looked at this little Ice Age book. Do you remember for like rules where it was like, because it was also like pre-internet days there.
Mm-hmm. So you had to wait until the next set came out to get the really updated wording on everything.
Yeah, and even when there was internet, eventually it was like they didn't have good Magic websites for a long time.
It's true. And even if you look back at some of the older sets, like Urza's Block, if you look at their product information on the Magic the Gathering website, it's still in the old format. And it's like, actually, it's really funny to look at because the deck lists for the pre-constructed decks are in text form, and like instead of in, now they have it in like long page form or whatever. It's just interesting. Or the last time I looked at them, they were.
So channel, they're not going to print anymore. It's too good. Sick. I feel like, yeah, they put it in cube, which is really dirty, since they also put like Banefire and other X-Burn spells in cube, but whatever. So
Channel's good.
Channel's overpowered. Anytime you can, I mean, that much mana at the cost of your life, it pretty much means alongside an X-Burn spell. If you have more life, you win the game.
Yeah. It's almost game over anyway. Even if you were at 4 mana with a 1 mana X spell. Pay 19 life. Pay X.
And then maybe just attack with your creatures. You know, let's say you have a couple creatures.
4 mana and 19 life is you're dead because I have the 20th point of damage as real mana here.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's really silly. So channel was just way too good. Way too good. They didn't know. Chaos Orb's a funny example of an old card that has an ability that they're not going to really do in Magic anymore. But it's a 2-mana artifact, a mono artifact at that. 1 mana, if Chaos Orb is on the battlefield, flip Chaos Orb onto the battlefield from a height of at least 1 foot. If Chaos Orb turns over completely at least once during the flip, destroy all permanents it touches, then destroy Chaos Orb.
Cool picture.
So
effect.
What we're saying is you're literally flipping a card to land on other cards and then destroy those cards that it lands on. Obviously, the reason this is broken is if someone sees that it's like, in response to you playing Chaos Orb, separate all my permanents from each other. So it just doesn't even make sense. But
it doesn't make for a good game either.
No.
Like, because of that.
It does have a cool picture. And it's just like a puking little orb monster thing.
Chaos Orb. Ooh.
Chaos Lace, also an early cycle. These were just a cycle of, it costs 1 colored mana of whatever color card it was, and then it changes the color of 1 card, either being played or already in play, to the whatever color it is. So they have, for white, it would be 1 white instant, change the color of 1 card either being played. Target spell or permanent becomes white, is what it would be. So that the old wording is way longer and more confusing, but this ability, they don't really do that much anymore because in any color, because you have to, you really need to indicate in some way that it's changing to that. So they really have tried to eliminate memory from the game, which is, I think, necessary. Who wants to like remember something as boring as like, oh yeah, that permanent is red or that permanent is white for the rest of the game?
Right.
a little bit confusing.
Without a counter indication, it's
They
like
do it at
really
until in a
difficult.
turn. I mean, trait doctoring
Yeah.
is this ability.
But if they were gonna do it like this, they would probably have it be similar to Aquatex will, where you put a flood counter on it,
Yeah.
and then it becomes an island.
If you have counters to indicate, then
Yeah.
that works. But just memory based, I don't like it.
No, it doesn't work.
Too dated. Circle protections. It surprises me that these cards made it to 8th edition because they are straight up hose to some colors that have no answers for
Enchantments.
Yeah,
Red
like
in
red,
particular.
yeah.
Black also.
Yeah.
Black doesn't really have an answer to them.
So, what are your feelings about circle of protections?
I like them because that's the kind of player I am, but I don't think they're right. You know, I think that Story Circle is probably the fairest version.
Then
Most
yeah,
fair,
let's
I
look,
should say.
Let's look up the wording on Story Circle. That one I know you pick a color, but it's 3 mana. As it enters the battlefield, choose a color, and then
White only.
I see. So you can't just pay a colorless.
Yeah.
It didn't even make sense with the
I
circle
know.
of protections.
It's like,
If there's-
la-da-da.
Well, it doesn't make sense because if it's supposed to be the white card protecting you, then why shouldn't you have to use the white mana to protect yourself? So that was really dumb. That card would feel a little bit. It still would be way too good, but
It's very good, and like what really shocks me is that they're actually, I think all 5 of them are in Modern too. You know.
really,
Yeah.
are you sure?
The whole set is in Modern, yeah, and I just
Because it's in 8th edition.
yeah, and that's COP Blue, and they put COP Red and Black in 9th
Jeez.
edition even.
So you have to deal with that in Modern.
Well, I don't think that anybody plays them, which I always thought was surprising, but I guess they're
Maybe
just
they're
not good
maybe
enough.
they're too slow.
Yeah.
But they're just too annoying.
They are super annoying.
So Circle Protection Blue, probably the most useless one, which is kind of funny. But
I'd say.
they only printed it up to 8th edition.
What's the 8th edition art look like?
It's like a guy with silver hair. Let's go to the next page here. Oh wait, we have more. All the COPs.
No black.
Forgot to print black, but thank God they remember that gloom.
Yeah.
Clockwork Beast. This is a cool early card.
Yeah.
We don't have to read him. We can go clone. Here, this one's actually maintained all the way up to standard currently. So what a progression this card has had. And recently, with the new rules changes, this will no longer be able to destroy legends. So, what are your feelings about clone? Do you like it?
Clone's cool. I'm glad that cloning something doesn't kill the legendary creature anymore.
Are you glad that they maintained the clone as opposed to the Vestivan Doppelganger?
I guess. I like Vestivan Doppelganger more, but clone is really good.
Do you think it's because it's more simple and it feels a little more...
I think that's why clone makes it, and then because clone is like the version that you can expand upon in the expert level expansion sets, you know? So you put clone in your core set because then you can print cards like Phyrexian Metamorph and show people what
else
clone
can
be.
Evil Twin.
Yeah. Yeah, Evil Twin is another good example. Oops, sorry. And Progenitor Mimic even. So I like clone as the base and a good thing to show people.
Cool early picture too. It's like just 2 knights looking at each other. Clearly clones of each other.
You don't know which one's
Cockatrice, this ability is actually maintained in green. The sort of, I'm trying to think of the greater Basilisk or something. They do Basilisk.
That's Death Touch. Yeah, it's just an upgrade to Death Touch pretty much.
Yeah. Funny early picture. Little crazy chicken mutant thing.
It looks too small for what a Cockatrice should look like.
Contract from Below. Here's our first example of an anti-card. And now anti-cards no longer exist since it sort of destroys the... I don't know. Destroys a part of the game. It makes it a gambling sort of game.
Yeah, it makes it less of a game and more.
Well, because there's a secondary market with the cards that are, some of them have very high value. The idea of kids anteing just seems very unattractive to parents or anybody, lawmakers.
Yeah, lawmakers in particular, I think.
But it was, Contract from Below was a really actually good anti-card. It was 1 black, discard your hand, add the top card of your library to the ante, then draw 7 cards. Really good.
Cool art.
Really good.
It's an amazing card.
Yeah.
And when you think of it being in the same set as Ancestral Recall, it's just like...
And Moxes and Black
Yeah,
Lotus.
you could draw so many cards. for 1 mana in this, like, early on. But you, of course, had to play for ante. But if you were
Very
drawing
good.
7 cards, I feel like you win the game, probably.
Conversion, here's an example of white card they would never print anymore. And this is at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice conversion unless you pay 2 white, and then all mountains are plains. So it's straight up like land hose 2 red. They try not to do this style. Once again, it's white interacting with lands. They must have really
They
liked
don't
that
try to
beginning.
like really screw over basics in this widespread kind of way anymore, because basics are what newer players will be playing with. So instead they would target non-basics or do color card hosing and only 1 card at a time. You know, they used to just, it was like blot out the fucking sun. They were like destroy all plains, destroy all islands, destroy all forests. I think they printed 1 for each even. I'm not, maybe not black, maybe not destroy all swamps, but they definitely have done it.
This whole land hosing idea was just
very rude.
Originally, they thought it would be cool. I'm sure they originally were like, it would add a whole new dynamic to the game, where it's like, kill them through damage or destroy all their lands and then destroy them through creatures.
Yeah,
and they didn't
destroy
realize,
their resources and get them.
Yeah, they didn't realize how obnoxious that was going to be. And
well,
eventually
I think they just didn't realize what the cost of it should be and how they shouldn't be doing it as widespread.
It shouldn't be affecting all their lands. 1 at a time is much more manageable for your opponent.
For both parties. Well, I mean, like, it's a less attractive strategy if you're doing it 1 at a time, but at least your opponent has a chance.
And they did not put conversion past 4th edition. So,
smart move.
Yes, I agree. Copper Tablet. It's kind of a cool artifact. 2 mana at the beginning of each player's upkeep. Deals 1 damage to that player. Now, why did they get rid of this in Unlimited? I feel like this could be printed today just fine.
It would be able to be printed just fine.
I mean, Razor Tip Whip, probably arguably even better than this, but I guess you don't have to pay for it each turn. They could totally...
But it hits you too, so it's like...
Too weak?
It is pretty weak, but... I don't know. Now they've printed Curse of Pierce Heart, so...
I guess it's similar. They got rid of this idea quick, though, on an artifact. Copy artifact was cool. Do you kind of miss... Because they also had, like, a copy enchantment spell in blue as well, right?
They didn't do that one until Return to Ravnica. Alright, until Ravnica.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought it was straight up, there was one called Copy Enchantment.
I think that is it.
Oh, I see. That was in Ravnica, huh? Huh. For some reason I thought that was older. But, so, how do you feel about, I mean, clearly it should be in blue, so they chose the right color for it. But how do you feel about these copy artifacts, these copy enchantments? Do you think it should just be copy other permanents in general?
Like, how do you mean, I guess?
Well, now with the new Planeswalker rule, what if they had, like, copy Planeswalker or something?
Oh, like that? I guess they could do that.
You know what I mean? That's actually, since it wouldn't destroy the opponents.
That's very true. But then you could just get yours to, like, their lowest point.
It'd be a really narrow card if you think about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It would be pretty narrow.
It would only affect you
wouldn't even do anything with it either. Like,
they couldn't make it, actually, because it would only affect your opponents that even are playing Planeswalkers. So Planeswalkers would have to be, like, get to the point where they're played in every deck before that card would even be playable.
And then they'd have to, that would mean that they'd have to be, like, hyper specialized at that point, so you might copy one that's not even useful to you.
Do they have blue copy lands? I know they have lands that copy lands.
They have blue switch lands.
Blue switch lands?
Yeah, exchange control of...
Oh, yeah. Good point. But they don't have, like, straight up blue cards that...
Copy lands?
Yeah.
No. Not that I can think of.
Like Todic, Manipulate, no, copy 0. Well...
I think the problem with land token in general is that it's a token of a land, you know?
Yeah.
Or whatever. I know, maybe not. If you printed it as an enchantment like this that became a copy of it or whatever, that could work. But it is still blue ramp then. You know, you'd have to cost it pretty high.
Copy artifact must be one of the few examples of an enchantment artifact type, right? Is there anything else that would even do that?
That maintains its other type.
Or is that straight up artifact enchantment? That's just weird. That's like as bizarre a mashup as you can get.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not.
It's like polar opposites. I gotta run to the bathroom quick.
Yeah,
Look for some broken color. Ooh, Crawlworm was all the way back to alpha, huh?
Hex yes. And cool art too.
Hex
Even though it looks like it was done with colored pencil. Which I don't have a problem with. Creature Bond we talked about. Crusade, which is actually kind of funny because Crusade costs more than Black Moon or Bad Moon, and still it pumps your opponent's creatures. Crystal Rod. This one, they got out of this cycle pretty quickly. Well, not actually, no. Why did I say that? It survived up till 8th edition. Oh yeah. The 5th edition art, that's when they first came out with that art, was really good. But, like the original art, not so good, in my opinion. And then the 7th edition art, I think this one showed... So in 7th edition, they kind of had this story going where each of these creatures that were not legendary were represented as on the cards as kind of being legendary. The blue one was Lord of Atlantis, the green one was Elvish Champion, and so forth, I suppose. But I'm trying to think. Western and Eastern and Northern and Southern Paladin. And then I suppose Goblin King is probably the other one that got represented that way. I gotta take this phone call then. Hey, what's up?
Alright.
Hey.
So, Cursed Land? Is that the last one I was looking at?
Are you...
I see. Okay. Cursed Land does not feel very black, I'll say that. Beginning, I mean, I guess black does get affect lands, but it's like, destruction
Okay,
of lands.
Just hold tight and I'll get there as soon as possible, okay?
Okay.
Yep, no problem. Bye-bye. I gotta go, dude.
Well, Jake had to take off early, so I think we're just going to move straight to the draft and see what we're going to do here. Yeah, I think he had to go into work unexpectedly, unfortunately, and I don't really like just doing solo podcasts. It's better to like talk to someone, you know. So I think we're just going to start a draft here and create together here. I don't mind drafting on my own, but for some reason podcasting on my own seems strange. I'd want more preparation, I guess, to talk about. I probably could, but it's much better talking to somebody. Okie dokie, pack 1, and we have opened Mirko Vosk. Almost assuredly the pick, very much like him. It's also Putrefy, Haunter of Nightvale. Both very good, very strong cards. Unfortunately, we're passing the Haunter, which is going to pass a Dimir Signal, but it doesn't matter. Mirko Vosk, in my opinion, is worth playing. I don't know how to avoid. It's not worth... I mean, Putrefy, there's also green, Thrashing Moss Dogs in this pack. So really, I don't know. I think either way, anything you pick and you're passing, any of the good cards in here, you're passing that same signal. So let's just take the Mirko Vosk and see if we can maybe maintain Dimir or splash one of the colors in his casting cost. Alright, past a Renegade Crisis, but there's also Pilfered Plans, which is pretty cool with Mirko Vosk. And actually we're not passing too many more Dimir cards after that. Looks like red and white. So let's take Pilfered Plans here. Can still go 3-color if we have to. Wow. Warped Physique. It's a very strong card. Another Pilfered Plans would be good, but I think we're just going to slam the Warped Physique. Always love making that Dimir deck. So hopefully wheel the Pilfered Plans. It does happen more often than you'd think. Probably wheel the Hired Torture. Possibly wheel the Maze Abomination. Here we can take the Windrake. It's also Punish, which is quite good. Gel and Sphinx, which is quite good. I'm fine with Windrake though. It's a pretty solid. Keeps us on this Dimir plan. Pretty solid pick in general. Okay, now we have Maze Abomination, Mind Static. I'm fine with Abomination. It's a good 6-drop. Clogs up the board fairly well. Yeah, I dig pretty much all the cards we have so far. Hopefully keep this Dimir thing going. Definitely someone's going into blue. I mean, we're passing Gel and Sphinx and other good blue cards. Alright, here we can take the Gatekeeper if we thought we were going to get enough gates. But I actually have come to like Maze Glider quite a bit. So I think I'm going to pick that. It is a 6-drop, but I've been comparing it to Asperia's Skywatch. Yes, Skywatch detains a creature, but Maze Glider has 2 more toughness and affects other creatures you control. So I've come to like the card quite a bit. It's a good finisher. Maze Abomination as well. These two are probably the best. I'm trying to think of the other ones. The red one is okay. The green one is okay. Good, okay to good. I've played Maze Abomination. No, Maze Behemoth quite a bit, and I like it. So still on the Mirko Vosk plan. You don't even have to be. Thing is, you don't even have to be dedicated Mel to play Mirko Vosk by any means. He's just perfectly fine on his own. All right, take another Pilfered Plans. Love this card. Good value. Pack 2 is going to be very important, as that's going to be our Dimir pack. And we have to clean up on blue and black cards out of the last pack, so we can find some scavenge with like Sewer Shambler and Locust maybe. And the blue cards, just flyers, maybe like Vassal Soul if we have to. And so we'll see. I mean, once again, pack 2 is going to be very important. We want to make sure we pick up enough removal. Mirko Vosk typically ends the game in about 2 turns, which is pretty awesome. Here we're pretty clearly taking the Mind Static. Boros Guildgate, probably the best card remaining in the pack, but let's just take as much Dimir as we can to kind of make that dry up. Get as much of it as we can. I wouldn't mind some Grizzly Spectacles. Those are a pretty high commodity. If you haven't been watching my last few drafts, I've been trying to stick to 2 color as often as I can. I feel like 3 color is very good, and you can make it work, but not having to grab fixing, if you can make 2 color work, I say go for it. Definitely slamming Fatal Fumes here. It's a pretty good removal spell. We can take the... I don't really like Serve as a trick that much. Ubulsar or Opal Lake Gatekeeper seems like it's playable. Alright, definitely table that Pilfered Plans and the Hired Torture. I think I'd rather have 3 Pilfered Plans. Find our bomb. Hired Torture is fine, but not necessary right now. Could take the Clue Stones for like Orzhov for like a splash, but let's just take Hidden Strings. It's not a very good card, but if you get Extort, I could see it being playable. Another Mind Static, I guess. Probably not playing both of them. Maybe playing one. Opal Lake Gatekeeper in general is not a great one. It does cantrip, but we currently have 0 gates. We're not likely to play gates in this deck, so there is that. I mean, it is a 2/4 body, so it's like an amphibian Cutthroat from M12, if you remember that card. And it has a additional perk to it if you get lucky. But once again, we don't likely look like a deck that's going to need multiple gates. Wow. Alright, this pack's pretty good. I think we want the white of Precinct 6 since we already have Pilfered Plans and Mirko Vosk. It's going to be quite strong. There's also Skyjack, not on color stuff, but Zamek Guildmage, Boros Charm, Watery Grave, Skinbrand, Daring Skyjack, Scorchwalker. A lot of good red, white, green, blue cards, but let's take white Precinct 6. It's pretty excellent. First pick for us with all our draw cards. With all our draw card and make them mill the triple Pilfered Plans. Maybe we'll get another one. That'd be kind of cool. Wouldn't mind some extort creatures, some more removal. Death's Approach seems like it would be a very good card for us. Currently our removal is Warped Physique and Fatal Fumes, but it's not horrible. It's still early on, so can find the right cards. 14 playables in the deck currently. Cloudfin Raptor seems fine here. Actually, Grizzly Spectacle I think is going to be the pick. With the triple Pilfered Plans, I'd rather be a little more control-y. So we're going to take Grizzly Spectacle over the Cloudfin Raptor. And there's also Truefire Paladin, Daring Skyjack, Biomass Mutation, Aerial Maneuver. Multiple Skyjacks being passed is a little bit worrisome, but we'll take the Grizzly Spectacle here pretty happily. Excellent removal. Works well with both white and Mirko Vosk. Pretty good sign that we got past that, because I was worried that we were passing, you know, the Hunter of Nightveil to the opponent on the right, and the fact that he did not first pick the Grizzly Spectacle is a pretty good sign. Alright, we did in fact get past another white of Precinct 6, so that's pretty awesome. We're going to slam that over the Psychic Strike and Syndicate Enforcer and Gutter Skulk. There's also Corpse Blockade, some good on color stuff for us here. Pit Fight in the pack, not on color, but good removal. Guardian, excellent card. Guardian of the Gateless, that is. Let's take the white of Precinct 6. Happy to have 2 of those. Alright, next pack, there's Last Thoughts, Totally Lost, Gutter Skulk, Sunhome Guildmage, Elusive Krasis. Totally Lost is good if you have... Totally Lost is good with our mill, with like Pilfered Plans and Grizzly Spectacle and stuff. But Gutter Skulk is a 2-drop and we're short on creatures currently. I might just want some early blockers. So let's take the Gutter Skulk. Next we have Hands of Binding, Frilled Oculus, Syndicate Enforcer, Dying Wish. What's our evasion? Our only evasive creatures currently are just the Windrake and the Maze Glider, and the Mirko Vosk. But I think we want the Syndicate Enforcer here. It's another 4-drop, but we're not likely to play our Mind Statics. I'd rather play a Syndicate Enforcer because it's a creature and it has Extort. So I'll take the Enforcer. There's a chance he could have wheeled, and I might have just wanted the Hands of Binding, but Hands of Binding does not look that great in this deck. Currently. Could see a bunch of flyers out of the last pack, in which case it would be better, but I'd like to see some Death's Approach. That would be nice with our mill. Let's hide the Mind Statics for now. Wow, another Boros Charm. It's also Denrova Horror, which is an excellent spell. It's also Devour Flesh. Denrova Horror is pretty good for getting additional creatures in their graveyard for the white, potentially. Devour Flesh is very cheap removal. We do currently only have 9 creatures. There are 10 picks left in this pack. I don't think we're going to wheel the Denrova Horror. He's a 6-drop, but he's pretty strong. I like I think I want the Horror. He's like a Void Wielder sort of, except he has even more crazy stuff he can do. He interacts fairly well with Maze Abomination and Maze Glider. I do like the Devour Flesh too. It also works with the white, but I don't know. I really like Denrova Horror a lot, comparing it to Void Wielder. Alright, we could take the Dimir Guildgate here. I don't think we need another 6-drop. And Dimir Guildgate maybe makes the Gatekeepers a little more playable. There's also Prophetic Prism, which doesn't look necessary. Okay, now there's Shadow Slice. I think we'll take that, even though we don't have that many flyers. It's okay in general. Zamek Guildmage did table, which is pretty remarkable, but I'm going to try and keep it 2-color still. And Zamek Guildmage would not be that great on the splash, I don't think. So let's take the Shadow Slice. Wow, and just multiple Simic, just all the Simic signals. Nice. Guess we'll take Last Thoughts. It's also Contaminated Ground, which I've had played against me, which is interesting, but I don't think it's that great. Alright, definitely take the Voidwalk. Voidwalk is actually pretty decent. Managed to be a pretty decent card against auras and cipher effects. Can take the Corpse Blockade here. We can also take the Psychic Strike. Psychic Strike mills for the white. Let's kind of go down more that plan. Even though Corpse Blockade's a good blocker, I could see that argument for that. Let's take the Strike because it mills, which I like more for the white. Alright, we did table the Totally Lost, which is nice. Totally take that. Alright, I guess we'll take Frilled Oculus. Totally could have gone into Simic. I mean, we're just getting the latest Simic picks I've ever seen, so no one is in Simic. We probably are competing with people for spells, but I'm pretty satisfied with what we have already. Let's get rid of the Last Thoughts. Let's get rid of the Voidwalk. Let's get rid of the Oculus. Let's get rid of the Hidden Strings. So, hiding all that, currently have 19 good playables. It's pretty satisfactory. This pack has Dead Reveler, Launch Party, Shred Freak. I think we're just taking the Dead Reveler. He's a creature, he's a good attacker, he's a good blocker. Fine first pick, not super exciting. Our rare is Grove of the Guardian. So we'll take Dead Reveler. Um, 11 creatures, which isn't much, but we have triple Pilfered Plans. So that's a good sign. Alongside the Warp Physique and Pilfered Plans work really well for each other. And not having a lot of creatures is okay if you have a lot of draw spells. Martial Law got passed to us. There's also Judge's Familiar in this pack, which I would like. But I think we're just going to slam the Ultimate Price, which is excellent piece of removal. Very good when you have a lot of draw cards and stuff that gets bigger for creatures in your opponent's graveyard. AKA White of Precinct 6. Okay. This pack's got Inaction, Injunction, Paralyzing Grasp. Grasp is worse in this deck because we have the whites, so we kind of want to put their creatures in the graveyard. But I think I'm still going to take it here over the Injunction. I guess Injunction's okay at cantrips, so we can take that over the Grasp. Maybe we'll wheel the Grasp. Not super likely, but possible. Got past the Grasp anyway. I think we want the long legs here for double black. There's also Perilous Shadow, which is fine, but I like the long legs more, I think. It's a better price. There's also Annihilating Fire in here. Dryad Militant, Golgari Decoy, Centaur's Herald. Good green spells. Eyes in the Sky is good white. Rune Wing's fine. Let's take the long legs. It's a good beater. Alright, this pack has Launch Party, Stealer of Secrets, Grim Roustabout. Currently our removal is Injunction, Ultimate Price, Warped Physique, Fatal Fumes, Grisly Spectacle. Totally lost. I wouldn't mind having some more removal. Probably get away with replacing Shadow Slice with more removal. I could take the Stealer, but like I said, with all the draw cards, we don't need too terribly many creatures. And Launch Party is actually a pretty good piece of removal. I guess it's better when you have a lot of creatures, but we have ones I'm willing to throw away. And we probably wheel the Roustabout or the Stealer. Maybe. Let's just take the Launch Party. I like it. We can get rid of the Totally Lost, or the Shadow Slice. Okay, we can take Gatekeeper, or Doorkeeper. I don't think we need the Inspiration since we have the triple Pilfered Plans. Seems unnecessary. Let's just take the Doorkeeper here. He's a fine blocker. He's also sack fodder for Launch Party, and he's also putting cards in your opponent's graveyard if you have the excess mana, which is good for the whites and milling them faster with Miracle Vosk. So it looks like we probably want to cut the eventually Gatekeeper. I guess we can keep him around. It's just a 2/4. So maybe the Totally Lost is the next cut. And then we'll have a fair amount of removal and creatures. Definitely slamming the Hover Barrier here. He's almost like pseudo removal since he blocks everything. Really like that. We'll hide the Totally Lost. Alright. Crosstown Courier also mills. But there's Skywatch, which is better. Skyline Predator, which is fine as well. I don't really like Courier that much. We already have 3 6-drops though, which is a pretty significant amount. I think we can take the Courier. He doesn't get in very much. But when he does, he can really set up your whites. You can see that being good. I don't know if I play 4 6-drops. I guess I'm taking the Courier. It's more likely I play the Courier. So, need to make a few cuts now. Maybe the Gatekeeper goes... Actually, I have some decisions to make here. Maybe the Gutter Skulk goes. Crosstown Courier is a little bit more of our strategy, since it mills, even though it has 1 less toughness. We didn't have to be a dedicated mill deck. It's really nice having the perk of double white and Mirko Vosk. Alright, got another Courier. I'm pretty happy about that. I think we're going to try for that strategy over... Yeah, we can get rid of Gatekeeper now. Just a 2/4, don't need it. Unnecessary. It's a cool looking deck. Good split of removal. Good amount of win cons. Maybe we don't even need the Syndicate Enforcer in here. Guess we can take Downsize, but not likely to play it. So currently our deck is looking very good. I wield the Paralyzing Grasp, that's kind of cool. Might sideboard into it, not likely to main deck it. Pretty unnecessary. Maybe we're cutting the Gutter Skulk. Just do on the Crosstown Courier, White of Precinct 6 plan. I kind of like that. Perilous Shadow Table, that's a good card. I'm probably not likely to play that either. I guess we could cut the Syndicate Enforcer or the Dead Reveler, but Dead Reveler is a better blocker, which I think this deck likes. Neither of these matter, I guess. Alright. Oak Street Innkeeper, second to last pick, and last pick Island. Alright, so pretty solid looking Dimir deck we have here. Gotta make a couple more cuts, but I still think I want the triple pilfered plans with the double white of Precinct 6. Didn't get any Death's Approach, just a little bit disappointing. But, oh, and the pilfered plans work really well with the Warp Physique, like I said earlier. Maybe we don't need the main deck Psychic Strike, but I actually like that quite a bit too. We actually, we ended up with a fair amount of good mill cards. So let's put in all the cards that we want to play possibly first. Looked like we had a pretty good curve. Still kind of like the Injunction alongside the Couriers. Maybe we don't need the Doorkeeper. Alright, this is 24, and we have a Guildgate. Okay. Let us look for one cut. So this is 14 creatures. Let's put our removal down here so we can take a look at it. A lot of 3-drop removal. Okay, so our removal is Ultimate Price, Inaction, Injunction, Warped Physique, Psychic Strike, Triple Pilfered Plans. It's not removal, but draws us our removal, and Fatal Fumes. So that's all our non-creature spells. And then we have Double Crosstown Courier, Doorkeeper, 2 white of Precinct 6, Dead Reveler, Hover Barrier, Windrake, Grizzly Spectacle, Launch Party, Syndicate Enforcer, Golgari, Longlegs, Mirko Vosk, Dinrova Horror, Maze Abomination, Maze Glider. I do kind of want the Extort, but at the same time I like the Dead Reveler because he's a good attacker and blocker. I could cut one of my Pilfered Plans, but I kind of don't want to. I guess I'd rather almost cut a Psychic Strike, but I don't really want to cut any of my mill cards in general. If I was to cut a creature, perhaps the Doorkeeper, I could sideboard into it. It does mill as well, but we don't have any other defenders, so it's pretty abysmal mill. It's a little bit pricey for what it does. It does block early as well, but I'd rather have all my creatures be able to attack, I guess. So this looks like a pretty solid 23-card Dimir deck. Good curve. If you want to watch this draft, go to SeemsGoodMagic.com. I'll have the rounds posted there. Email me at mortarpod@seemsgoodmagic.com. I guess I can add the lands real quick. I'm pretty sure, yeah, we're just going to do an even split. I'm guessing. No green. So 8 swamps, 8 islands, and Tamir Guild Cape. Mortarpod at SeemsGoodMagic.com. If you have any comments on the podcast. Sorry, this one was a little bit short today. You can follow us on Twitter at SeemsGoodMagic. And if you do, you know when we live stream, which is Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 p.m. Central Time. Occasionally we do surprise live streams where we'll just be playing Commander or something and we'll come on. It looks like there's Plane Chase or something for online, which I didn't know that, but it looked like they were offering Plane Chase stuff in their store, which is kind of cool. So I might be looking into recording that if I pick it up. Alright, I think that's it for the podcast. Support my eBay store by going to SeemsGoodMagic.com, clicking on the eBay store link, and purchasing any playsets or singles. I've really been trying to price it at, give it a reasonable price. It really directly supports these videos and the podcast and everything, so really would help me out tremendously. I'm still looking into starting an online bot. I think it's a little pricier than I thought it would be, but I'm still working out a lot of kinks. I'm very busy, so I'm working on it. Yeah, thanks.